Whoa, hey, I didn't even see you there. It's time for another episode. Don Grandt, CTC, Cutting Tool Counselor, here with another exciting episode of In The Loupe TV. Before we get started, please, just formality, hit the like, hit the subscribe, share it with anybody you think might gain from the knowledge we bring from a cutting tool company. Harvey Performance is the sponsor, and we love doing these vlogs for you. This one is going to be pretty innovative. Obviously, with a lot of aerospace stuff going on, a lot of boat manufacturing, wind turbine stuff, there's a material that's used in a lot of those industries that sometimes gets a little bit tricky to understand. It's called composite, or as my friends up north call it, composite. We're going to talk about composite material on this episode of In The Loupe TV and how your cutting tools, which look really different than standard cutting tools, affect those materials. Let's do it. Let's talk about it next. Well, hey folks, thanks for coming back. We're talking about composite. And composite is such a broad term for what I'm about to explain. Composite is usually two or more materials put together in a substance to make a finished material for a certain purpose. Plywood is a composite. Fiberglass is a composite. Carbon fiber is a composite. Particle board that you use to build homes is a composite. There's a lot of different composites out there, and it's usually two or more materials, which, by the way, a lot of people say, I have two or more personalities, which isn't true. Yes, it is. It is true. No, it's not. It's not true. Why are you even saying it's true? Because I said it was true. That's the end of the story. Okay, I guess it's true then. So this is going to be fun. There's a lot of things that we want to talk about and how those cutting tools affect composite. We can't do it here. We got to run to the shop and talk about it next. So thanks for joining me at the shop. And before we get started talking about composite, which we're going to break down certain composite materials, take a look at this tool. Take a look at this tool. Take a look at that tool. Them are some freaky looking tools, right? They're different. When you're cutting composite, it acts really different. Why does it act different? Why do we need tools that look like this? We're going to explain that, and I'm going to tell you how to use these tools, and I'm also going to tell you some of the breakdown of composites that help these tools actually break them down with as little trouble as possible. So let's just briefly talk about some of the industries that are using composite material before we talk about what makes them hard to cut and why you need tools that look like this. Number one is aerospace. Aerospace. Why? Well, one of the main properties of composite, carbon fiber, that's a composite, is its lightweight. Strength to weight ratio, right? Titanium is a big one, but carbon fiber is a composite. It's very lightweight, it's very strong. When you put an airplane up in the sky, lightweight is key for dollars, right? Fuel economy. It's also key to get that thing up off the ground, which I still have no idea how they get those things off the ground. Something like thrust and lift and all that other good stuff, but it's amazing. I fly a lot. It's very cool. Also, boat, right? Marine. A boat, fiberglass is a composite. Fiberglass is lightweight. It's very strong. They use it in boats. Boats have to float. You put a bunch of steel in a boat, what happens? It sinks. Put a bunch of steel in an airplane, might not fly. You see where this is going? We got like a sandwich of materials. The last one that I just want to talk about is wind turbine. Right? You got big wind energy stuff. That's a lot of composites, a lot of carbon fiber, a lot of those materials to help be things more lightweight. That's what composite does. And it also makes it very strong. Strength to weight ratio. That's why people use composites. So let's first talk about the most popular one, which is carbon fiber reinforced polymers, or CFRP. Carbon fiber. It's the main thing. It's used in a lot of the aerospace industry. It's used in automotive, wind turbine. You're going to find carbon fiber in a lot of different elements. We're going to break down what carbon fiber reinforced polymer is and why your tools need to look like this to cut it efficiently. So let's break that down. Carbon fiber reinforced polymers. Well, the first thing's carbon. Carbon is hard. It's abrasive. We need to attack that. When you're cutting anything that has the word carbon in it, it's going to be hard and it's going to be abrasive and it's going to eat up your tools. That's number one. The second one is probably what makes that material the most difficult to cut, and that's the fiber, carbon fiber. Speaking of fiber, I had a bran muffin this morning. I'll be right back.
2 hours later.
Okay, I'm back. Fiber, we're talking about fiber. So fiber within the polymer or the CFRP, fibers are one of the most critical because it can be unidirectional, which means those fibers can be all going the same way, or it can be woven, which means it's going opposite direction. So take a cutting tool and try and cut a bunch of fibers. Not easy to cut them without them fraying, delaminating, and everything else and have it look like that. So that's the second part. Reinforcement, CFRP, carbon fiber reinforced. Reinforced with different resins to hold it together, okay? Polymers holds everything together. So now you have carbon fiber reinforced polymers or plastic that hold that together. Very strong, very lightweight, and very hard to cut, which is why we got things that look like this. That's number one. So now let's just talk about fiberglass. Now you're going to notice a theme here, right? We had carbon fiber. It's got carbon in it and it's got fiber in it. Now we're talking about fiberglass. Anybody want to guess? The key element there is fiber, right? There's fibers, strings. I call it string, but it's fiber. Very hard to cut. Glass is what? Glass is what we drink out of and what I put on my eyes. But no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about glass that reinforces the fiber. Glass is very abrasive. It's hard to cut, very abrasive. So when you have fiberglass, you got kind of the same thing that's going on with CFRP in fiberglass, that you need to cut it without fraying, delaminating, tearing any of that material off. That takes special tooling. That's what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about the advantages of these type of tools and how it helps all the issues when you're cutting composite materials. So I just said the biggest problem is the fraying, the tearing of those fibers, carbon fiber, fiberglass. The biggest thing that we need to combat with the right, correct cutting tool is the tearing of the carbon fibers. Now, how do we do that? Well, first thing we need to do is make sure the tools are extremely sharp. Sharp, which means we have to have a high rake on them, and they need to be sharp, okay? This is very important because if you don't have a sharp knife, if you don't have a sharp cutting tool, you push the material, you lay it over, you create that fraying, you create that delamination, and it's not good for that part that's going in that airplane, especially if I'm flying on that airplane. So now we created a sharp cutting tool to cut the fibers very clean so we don't have that fraying. What do we need to do? Well, I said fiberglass and carbon fiber is abrasive because of the carbon and because of the glass and fiberglass and other materials that get woven with an epoxy or with a resin. That's what puts it together. It's very abrasive. So if we create a sharp cutting edge, that cutting edge is going to wear down really quickly. So what do we want to do? We want to put a coating on that cutting edge that's really going to hold up to that abrasiveness of the carbon and of the glass-filled materials to do that. Diamond is the way to go. We want to look at a DLC or a diamond-like coating, or we want to go with a CVD diamond coating, or better yet, a PCD, polycrystalline diamond cutter. What's it going to do? It's going to maintain a very sharp edge. That's number one. Cleanly cut the fibers. Number two, it's going to hold up with the abrasiveness of that material so that edge doesn't wear down. Who wants to put a tool in a machine and have it only last 30 seconds? We want it to last. So you got to be mindful to put the right coating on those materials when you're cutting those carbon fiber materials. Let's run into the geometry of these cutting tools, because at the beginning I said these are some real funny looking tools, but they have that geometry for a purpose. Let's talk about the diamond style. The diamond style tool you're really going to want to use for your carbon fiber. Why is it diamond? Because each one of those cutting edges are going in a different direction. That helps by not pulling the fibers up and not pushing them down. It offsets. It cuts very free. You can cut aggressively, and you're not going to get that fraying, and you're not going to get that delamination with a tool that has a burr style. You're also going to notice something on tools that cut CFRP and fiberglass where they don't really have a high helix. Look over here. You notice the helix is a lot slower. The helix is the angle from the straight of the cutting tool. The reason for that is we don't want to pull those fibers in a direction. Straight flute is not a bad option when you're cutting carbon fiber because you're pulling those fibers straight. You're not lifting them up, so you're not going to delaminate on the top and you're not going to fray. So you're going to notice helix angles are a lot straighter. Diamond cut will put it in directions, both directions. And we also have something called compression cutters. Compression cutter will actually push from the top and push from the bottom. So we sandwich the material so you don't get the fraying. It's all about the fibers. I'm telling you, when it comes to carbon fiber and fiberglass and different elements that have those fibers in it, you really want to make sure you don't pull them, you keep them compressed, and you cut them free, and you make sure you handle that abrasiveness. Well, folks, normally I do it's recap time, but I don't want to do that because we talked a lot about this. What I want to say during this moment is understand there's a lot of different binders that hold composites together. There's epoxy resins. There's different types of materials that bind that. There's also sandwiches that have different materials combined in composites, okay? There's different weaves, there's tight weaves, there's loose weaves, there's unidirectional weaves, there's woven weaves. There's a lot of different ways, which demands a lot of different tools to tackle all of those composites. Remember, composites, two or more materials put together, glued with a resin or with an epoxy to serve a purpose. So what I'm going to do is on the next one, we're going to do a two-part on this one too. On the next episode, I'm going to break down those cutting tools in a little bit more specific. We're going to pull all those cutting tools that we can, that we supply for carbon fiber, for fiberglass, even some honeycomb. Spoiler alert, some honeycomb material that we offer to cut that. And I'm going to give you a little bit of breakdown on how to use those tools and how they benefit you in your toolbox, in your machine shop to be more efficient. And I think that's a good way to go. So part 2 on this one, we're going to break down the tools. Hope you join me for that one. Well, hey folks, that's it. That's it for this episode on composites. We talked about an intro on composites, where you use composites, what the benefits are of composite, and then kind of a little bit on the cutting tools. The next episode, we're going to break it down even more. We're going to talk specific about those tools, how to use them, and how to get the biggest bang out of those tools for your buck. So stay tuned for that one. Please come back and watch that. Otherwise, a little spoiler, we're going to have a new segment going into summer. It's called Machine Shops and Flip-Flops. And basically what that is we have a lot of experts out in the field, very knowledgeable on cutting tools. I'm going to consult our team and get the tip of the month on how to use our cutting tools and what they think is majorly beneficial to help you out there machine better. Machine Shops and Flip-Flops coming to you on the next episode. But until then, 3 things in life we'll never get away from: death, taxes, and spring passes. Have a great rest of your week, folks.